Now by phone, President-elect at Santa Clara University, Father Kevin O'Brien. Father O'Brien, the mad scramble to save the many artifacts that were inside the Notre Dame was underway yesterday. If you could explain to us the historic and symbolic significance specifically to the Catholic Church and what it meant to see the Notre Dame burning yesterday.
Yeah, I think, this was a gut punch for a lot of Catholics, not just in France, but around the world. You talk to folks here in the U.S., I'm on the West Coast, my friends on the East Coast. It was a gut punch because you just hate to see this symbol of the Catholic Church go up in flames like this. But on my visits to Notre Dame, and I think other people will attest, it's sort of what Anne said. When people go in there, whether they're religious or not, their gaze is drawn heavenward. They look up at those beautiful arch ceiling, and you touch transcendence there. You touch something otherworldly at Notre Dame, and it calls all of us to something greater. And so to see it in flames, I think it impacts us just as human beings, because we know we're meant for something greater, and this beautiful cathedral represented that. I mean, to see that spire fall, and that spire, I believe, dates to the 19th century, and they built it to sort of reach to the heavens. And then when we saw that spire fall into the flames, it hit you as a human being, but for me and others as a Catholic, especially during this Holy Week. But let me tell you that there is also something resilient. I mean, Joe recounted how long how this has been about 1,000 years this building has been here, and it has been through a lot of ups and downs throughout its history, and the building remains. It will be rebuilt. There's something resilient about this building, but more so something resilient about people's faith. And that's what I'm attaching to now.
Hey, Kevin, this is Mike Barnacle. Could you please, you just referenced Holy Week, Holy Thursday coming up, Good Friday, Easter Sunday. We've just been through Palm Sunday. The metaphorical aspect of what millions around the globe watched yesterday, Notre Dame burning, the ashes in the air, the sense of loss, the sense of hope, given late last night, early this morning, that it might be rebuilt. Could you speak to that in the sense of what it means to have faith in an institution and the cultural faith that you have in an institution?
Yeah, actually, this is the holiest week of the Christian calendar. And I think there's something that when we see here, we're approaching Good Friday, which marks the commemoration of the Lord's passion and death. And I think we see this a very powerful living passion. I mean, to see such destruction, such pain and loss is something that, in a sense, what is happening to this building, a lot of people cope with in different ways, our own sense of pain and loss and suffering. But at the end of Holy Week for Christians is Easter Sunday, where hope and life prevail over darkness and death and fire and destruction. And so I think that's where what Macron said about we're going to rebuild, in a sense, that's the clarion call. That's the summons of Holy Week, is that we're going to rebuild our lives, we're going to rebuild this church, and, hopefully rebuild our faith as a result of this reflection, which is caused by seeing this beautiful cathedral burn.
Father, how would you preach this? If, which I suspect you'll have to do in a few days. What's the message here for people who feel all too vulnerable all the time to see an emblem of what's supposed to be eternal also becoming ashes to ashes, dust to dust?
Right, yeah. I mean, John, that's a great question. And I can tell you a lot of us who will be preaching this week are thinking about that. I mean, for me, in a sense, this is a beautiful building. I mean, it's a monument to culture, as was mentioned earlier, and to faith. But faith does not reside in a building. We're also celebrating the time of Passover in this time of year, and the Jewish people had their temple destroyed earlier in their history, and the prophets responded to that destruction by saying that God is found not simply in a place, as they had been taught before, but in their hearts, in the people. And so they carry their faith with them. So the building, the Cathedral of Notre Dame, or the St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, or the Cathedral in Los Angeles, I mean, these symbols, these places, these sacred places, help people grow in their faith, but they are not the sum of people's faith. And so that's what's most important, is to remember that we will carry God always in our hearts, and how we make God living, not in a monument, but in our acts of justice and peace that we extend to other people. That's when the faith comes alive.
Ann Thompson.
Thank you, Mika. Father O'Brien, among my friends yesterday, because I cover the Catholic Church, more than one person said to me as they watched Notre Dame burn, isn't this a metaphor for what the Catholic Church is going through today? It is, when you talk to the leadership of the Church and they speak about the purification that's needed in the wake of the sex abuse scandals, you see this, you think about France, 60% of the people are Catholic, 10% of the people go to Sunday Mass. Do you see this as a metaphor for what is happening in the Catholic Church today?
Yeah, I think and that was a common refrain yesterday in a lot of conversations I had. The Church is going through a very tough time. Self-inflicted wounds, surely, but I think we have to remember that the Church doesn't exist for itself, but it exists for service in our world and to bring tenderness and gentleness. And we saw the destruction that a fire can bring, and it was devastating to watch. And we've seen that over and over again in the last 24 hours. But I think we just always have to remember that when things in life and in one's faith, when things are destroyed or brought down or leveled, that God is still at work laboring to bring new life. And that's where we have to go, both with what's happening within the Church now, but also within our world where there's so much division and so much pain and loss. For me, this is a call to latch on to hope and to make faith come alive, not necessarily in one building, but in how we live our lives and how we live our faith.
Father Kevin O'Brien, thank you very much.